Today we're going to be talking about 3CX Emergency 911 Notifier. It is part of our universal subscription. So having said that, let's talk a little bit about why 911 Notifier exists and some use cases that are typical for this product. If you have an educational facility or a campus environment where your business has multiple facilities, if you're having a hotel, these are all typical places, but really any place where security is an important part of what you guys are trying to address, 911 Notifier is going to be a good solution for doing that. Here we go. This is a new feature that's coming out with 911 Notifier. You saw that alert just popped up on my desktop, and it showed me that somebody had dialed 911, who they were, what their extension was, what their mobile number was, their address, and specific location. So we know what building they're in, what floor they're in, what pillar they're next to, what their cubicle number is, for example. This is a little desktop application that runs on your PC. You can set some preferences so that it'll actually play an audible alarm and do text to speech to show the actual to play the actual emergency information. So that's a tool. It's in beta test right now. But it should be out here very, very shortly. So I just wanted to show you one possible way that notifications could take place. We can also do notification by telephone call, by email, and by SMS text message. And we're in the design mode for proximity awareness. So for example, let's say that you're a physician and you're walking around within the hospital complex and you go into an exam room, and while working with a patient there's an emergency that takes place where the physician needs some assistance. They can push a button on their laptop, and the laptop is aware of where they are within what building and facility and floor and exam room, and it will give out notifications based on where they are. So that might also be helpful, for example, in warehouse environments where you have people walking around within a large facility and you need to know where within that large facility the person resides. So that's just some of the use cases for it. There's a couple of things that are a little new to 911 Notifier. They've been there a little while, but I wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of them, and that is panic buttons and continuous alarms. Those are fairly new to this product. Some of the benefits of having 911 Notifier is that you get instant notification when there's an emergency, whether that's through a panic alarm, through one of our continuous alarms, or through dialing an emergency number. It allows your internal emergency responders to take action much quicker, so you can deal with an emergency situation quickly. Without 911 Notifier, if you dial 911, there is the facility within 3CX to send out an email, but being able to do it through SMS text message, through telephone calls, through overhead paging systems, makes it a little bit broader reach. So certainly every possible way that you can do notifications is important, rather than just a simple email that somebody might not notice. One of the other benefits of 911 Notifier is that you can save on infrastructure. So instead of having a subscription service to a panic button that you place underneath the desk of your reception office, for example, you can just leverage the existing infrastructure that you have already purchased with 3CX and voice over IP phones. And then we'll talk a little bit about documentation. All right, maybe we could, you can see we're on our website. I got to this page by going up to products and then choosing product features, and then that lists all of our products and emergency 911 notifiers there. If you want to download our software or any updates, you can get them here, and download product manuals here as well. So I have the user guide up here. It's just an example of how it walks you through the installation process and some of the configuration screens. So that's part of our manual that's there. So let's start by looking at the 3CX management console. And this is just a test PBX that we've got going on. And here is the actual emergency notifier, and I'm on the extension screen. You can see that I've logged in as, well, let's just log out, and then you can see how this works. So as with most of our applications, you log in with your 3CX extension and your voicemail pin. And once you've logged in, then you can get access to all of the applications. And we're starting out on the extension screen. And you'll see right now I have 5 extensions. But let's go over to 3CX and let's add a new extension. And we'll make this extension 1, 2, 3, 4. How about that? I don't remember. Was it a 3-digit? I think it was a 3-digit extension on this PBX. And we'll call this webinar example. And we'll give it an address. My address at VoIPTools.com. And my mobile number is 123 1234 5678, something like that. I don't know if that's the right number of digits, but you get the idea. I'll press OK. I've created a new extension. Let's also go in here and change an existing extension. So I'm going to change this existing extension here, and we'll call it front desk. And press OK. All right, so when you've installed a 911 notifier for the first time, there won't be any extensions listed here. So you'll come to 3CX and you'll choose import extensions. Now, one of the things I want to point out is that right now it says reception, and there are 5 extensions. So I wanted to show you how updating this list works. So I'm going to press the import button, and now you'll see that there are 6, and where it used to say reception desk, it now says front desk. So what this allows you to do, because 3CX doesn't have fields for floor, pillar, cubicle, and address, what we do is we maintain a separate list that is then synchronized with 3CX so that you can add additional attributes to the extension. So if, for example, somebody gets married and their last name changes, you can certainly just go to 3CX and press the import button, and it will update any existing extensions that we've synchronized previously and update those and add any new extensions that are there. Once you've got the extensions here, you'll notice that here's an address that I put in previously for this particular extension. You can just go in here and you can add information. So we'll say that I'm in there, and I'm next to PO5, and I'm at cubicle 234, and you get the idea. So I can just press save, and now I have new location for each of my extensions. So this is particularly important. Let's take it, for example, this week I got a telephone call from a school district that has multiple high schools, junior highs, grade schools. And because of the government funding of internet services to schools, they have a very nice dual fiber ring between all of their facilities. And so what they've done is they've implemented a single phone system, the 3CX phone system, and that phone system provides phone services to all of their facilities, to all the high schools, junior highs, and grade schools, all with one phone system. So when somebody dials 911 at this school district, how on earth does an emergency responder know where to go? And so that's the purpose of going into all of these extensions and specifying exactly where those extensions reside. Okay, so that's a little bit about extensions. So we know how we may manage extensions and their locations. How do we manage who's going to be notified and how they're going to be notified? So we'll go to contacts and take a look. And you'll see that I've created just a couple of contacts in here. So I've got the emergency responder's name, their cell phone number, their email address, and then you'll notice that I've got in the SMS column their telephone number followed by their carrier name. So in this case, vtext.com is the email to SMS text gateway that's provided by Verizon. And so rather than having a complex where you have an SMS gateway that you plug in and paying for monthly services and all the configuration stuff and additional points of failure that are involved in setting up SMS gateway, we're just leveraging the email to SMS gateway that's provided commonly here in the United States by cell phone carriers. So I've defined multiple ways that I, as an emergency responder, can be notified of an emergency. And you'll notice this last column here, extension group. So if I go in here and take a look, I can see all of the extensions that happen to be created on this test server. And why is this important? Well, in the case of the school district, for example, if you have people who are emergency responders for the high school and somebody at the high school dials 911, we don't want to be notifying emergency responders at the grade school that an emergency took place. So you can go into 3CX and create extension groups and then assign extensions to those extension groups. And each extension group then is a location. So high school 1, high school 2, grade school, junior high, whatever. And then if I'm an emergency responder that's responsible for the high school, I would go in here and find the extension group for the high school that I'm an emergency responder for and select it. But you'll notice that on this one, I haven't selected any extension group. And what that means is that Samuel will be notified whenever a extension that's associated with the, in this case, surveyor extension group. If anybody within that extension group dials an emergency number, Samuel will be notified. But because Matthew, myself, by the way, I'm founder of VoIPTools and one of the main developers here at VoIPTools. If you were curious who you were talking to, I was supposed to do that at the start. But because I don't have an extension group specified, that means that I get notifications for every time that somebody dials 911 or has an emergency that takes place. So you have some control over who's being notified when events take place. All right, so let's talk about emergency numbers. I'm going to skip over speed dials real quick. In the original version of 911 Notifier, it was just 911. So we were just monitoring for 911. But what we found, now that we're in more than 85 countries around the world, that not everybody uses 911 for their emergency notifications. In fact, in the Caribbean, they have one number for police, one number for ambulance, one number for poison control. So they have multiple telephone numbers. And you may want to monitor more than just 911 notifications. But the other benefit to now being able to monitor multiple telephone numbers is that rather than testing the whole system by dialing 911, you can put in just any extension. You see, in this case, I've got 3333, which actually probably wouldn't work because we're on a 3-digit extension system. I didn't mean to delete it, so let's cancel that. Let me just go in here and change this. This would, I guess I have to delete it and restart it. And the reason that delete it and recreate it, the reason is because it's connected to a lot of people's notifications, so it won't let me delete it. So in any case, this should have been a 3-digit number instead of a 4-digit number. All right, so this is where you define what telephone numbers we're going to monitor. And so we have a Windows service that's running in the background that's watching all of the events that are taking place on 3CX. And it looks for people dialing the telephone numbers that you have listed in here. And it doesn't have to be just an extension. It could be any number. So that's why we support more than the actual number of digits that are supported for that system. Actually, I guess that makes the point, doesn't it? That 911 happens to be a 3-digit number, but you may be on a system that has more than 3 digits, or you may be dialing or monitoring for telephone numbers that are longer than 911, right? Okay, anyway, I digress. So this is how you set up what telephone numbers you want to monitor. And then let's talk a little bit about speed dials. So for example, let's say that you have a front reception area where people from the street can walk into your building and walk up to the reception desk and ask for assistance or information or guidance, whatever, right? And let's take a kind of unfortunate scenario that somebody with mental illness, an indigent person walks in and is clearly under the influence and has a machete waving around and screaming, "I want somebody to pay my taxes." You know, you don't want to escalate the stress of the situation by setting off alarms. So the front receptionist could simply press one of the programmable BLF buttons on their phone, and it silently sends out alarms to people. So you can see in this case that I've set up a panic button. The extension number is 825. I can send email notifications, SMS notifications. I can have a pre-recorded audio so that when it makes telephone calls, it's playing a message like there is an emergency up at the front reception desk or something like that. So when it's calling people on the phone, that's kind of how that works. And then you can specify who should be notified. So in this case, you can see that I've got Matthew Orr. I could click on this and let's look and see. Because I've already been selected and there's only 2 contacts, it knows to filter that list by people who've already been added. And now I've added 2 people. So whenever somebody dials the extension 825, I'm going to be notified and Samuel's going to be notified. And if you look, we've specified how they should be notified as well. If you go into contacts, then you see it saying notify me by email. I'm going to go here and I'm going to look, and here's my email address so I can be notified by email. The point being that you could have multiple emails. So I could have a personal email, I could have a work email, I could have an emergency email. You can put multiple emails in there and SMS text messages. You can put into this list as well things like an overhead paging system. So if you have an extension for overhead paging, you would simply add this as one of the contacts that's possible. And obviously, overhead paging isn't going to receive email, so you just don't put in the email number in the SMS text message. You just put in the telephone number. And then the system knows, well, if the value isn't there, I'm not going to try and send an email. But there is a value for phone, so I'll dial the extension of the overhead paging system, and it'll play the message that was specified. Let me go back to speed dials real quick. One of the other things that you'll notice, by the way, guys, feel free to ask questions, but one of the things you'll notice is this repeat button. And the purpose of this repeat button is for scenarios like, let's say, you live in an area where tornadoes are common. You could have a panic button specifically for tornado warnings, and it says something like, there's an imminent danger of a tornado, please move to the nearest designated tornado shelter area within the facility. And because it's flagged as continuous, it'll just keep playing that message over and over and over again. Same thing could be true of fire or any other kind of emergency that you need to have this for, and it'll keep playing. So you could imagine a scenario where you've done this for fire, and the fire alarm is going off, and it's going through the speakers of the phones, it's going through overhead paging, people are being notified by email, by SMS text message, by telephone calls. So everybody is going to know that there's a problem, and it's leveraging the existing infrastructure that you have. So great, the fire alarm's been going for 15 minutes, the emergency responders show up, and rather than just continuing to play that fire alarm, even though you're not inside the building, you have a cell phone. You can dial your regular telephone number, get to a digital receptionist, type in the extension number of the fire alarm, and it'll turn off. What I should point out is that it's one extension, and it's essentially a toggle. So the first time you call that extension, it turns on the alarm. And the second time you call that extension, it turns off the alarm. So you don't need a separate button for turning on the alarm and turning off the alarm. It's smart enough to use the same extension. So you can turn it on, you can turn it off from wherever you are, whether it's through a regular phone, whether it's through your 3CX client running on your cell phone. It's just an extension, so you can get to it just about any way. All right, not seeing any questions yet. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Let's see if I'm missing any. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so no questions yet, so I'll keep moving on. All right, so we talked about sending out email messages. What does that mean? So we've created templates for emails. So as you can see here, this is the email template, and this is the SMS text message template. And then you'll see over here on the right that there are a number of variables that you can use to include in your template. So you can see I've got a variable here for first name and last name and pillar and cubicle and buildings and all of those kinds of information. So you can design and customize these emails that are sent out and SMS text messages that are sent out so that they're unique to your situation. You remember that I was monitoring 2 emergency numbers, and I also had a panic button. So if I go to panic buttons and I select this, what you'll see is that now I can customize the email message that's sent out for that text message, for that panic button. So instead of it saying somebody dialed 911, for example, I can have a very clear message that says that when somebody dials extension 825, that's the front office panic button. I can type in something like an emergency has taken place at the front desk. You get the idea. So you can, and then you can use all of these variables. So the front desk at what building? Well, you can put all the building information in there and put it in here. And same for SMS text messages. All right, so going over to settings, not a lot to show you here. It's basically starting and stopping the service. If you're in a country other than the United States, you can control how the dates are displayed within the system. You can set up your SMS text, your SMS email server. You can select voices that are installed on your system for doing text to speech. You can control the volume, you can control the speed at which it speaks, and then of course the license. But the one thing we haven't talked about are logs. So if I go into logs, I'll talk to you. I see there's a question about what is publish. I'll come back to that real quick. But well, let's just do it now so that I don't forget. So let's see, that was under speed dials, wasn't it? Okay, so the way 911 Notifier works is it is a call flow designer application. So when you set up a speed dial, that speed dial has very specific functionality. It needs to know how to send emails, to make telephone calls, to send SMS text messages, and what recording it's supposed to play, those kinds of things. So that when you dial that extension, you're dialing the extension of a call flow designer application. And so when you're creating, because we can support an unlimited number of panic buttons and various alarms, we have to create a unique extension for each one of those alarms. So when you create a new one, let's just go in here and create a new one. So I'll go in here and I'll say, let's use extension 835, for example, and put in the alarm extension 836, 36. So this is the voice app, and this is the emergency extension, and you can put an extension here, fire alarm. Let's do tornado warning. Oh, okay, whatever, you have fire alarm. And I want to send notifications by email, by SMS text message, by, and this is a continuous one, so I'm going to check the repeat, and I'm going to select from a list of WAV files that have been uploaded to the system, so you can upload additional alarms there. So let me click on here. So you can just upload a WAV file for whatever alarm you want, and then it'll go here and look at what alarms have been uploaded, and you can select them. All right, so I've configured my my fire alarm, and I want to press publish. And what publish does is it builds that call flow designer application, and it then pushes that call flow designer application from 911 Notifier through our relay application up to the 3CX server, and it automatically creates that extension and that call flow designer application on your 3CX system. So it's pretty cool. So that's what the publish is all about. Be aware that pushing that publish button is pushing a call flow designer application up to the server. And part of the design of publishing new call flow designer applications as 3CX has developed it is that it requires a restart of the queue manager service. Getting into some technical details, call flow designer applications are actually queue extensions within 3CX. And when you create a new call flow designer application, 3CX requires that service restart. So you don't want to be publishing these call flow designer applications during business hours, because it will restart that queue manager service. So in answer to your question, that's what the publish button is. I see a couple more questions. Adam, would you need, let's see, would you need a SMS gateway for each carrier? No, to send SMS text messages via their email gateway, you do not need, you're just leveraging a gateway that's already there. Essentially what you're doing is you're sending an email to Verizon at a very specific location. And Verizon knows if I receive an email at this server, the intent is to take the telephone number from the email address and then send the body of the text of that email as a text message to that telephone number. Let's see, what else? Are these tools compatible with Google, AWS, VoIP, hosting of the 3CX where the customer doesn't have access to the host OS? You must have the ability to install our relay on the 3CX server, and I can explain a little bit as to why. This is kind of going into a bit of detail. I'll tell you what, let me come back to this question and to the remaining questions. I just have one more screen to explain, and then I can hit all of the questions that are coming up. So, an emergency has taken place, and you've sent notifications out to all of your emergency responders by phone, by email, by SMS, text message. You want to keep track of those events and who responded and what happened for historical purposes. So we create a log, and it's complaining because I've made changes, but I haven't saved them. So I'm going to go ahead and press leave. So you'll see here's an example of an event that took place today. It was extension 101. It was this telephone number was the person's cell phone number. They were on this floor, this pillar, this cubicle, this address. So we know where it took place. And let's expand this. And we see who was notified and how they were notified. But you also want to record some notes about what took place. So you can put in here information like Joe was having heart pains, and so Samuel and I rushed to his location. It took us about 2 minutes for us to get there. We met with him, and he said that he was just having an anxiety attack, and that he actually is feeling much better now, and that we don't need to do anything. But because he dialed 911, the ambulance was sent, so the paramedics come and they talk with him, and they strenuously advise him to come to the hospital so that they can check him out more thoroughly and make sure that there isn't anything that goes on. And he refuses treatment after quite a bit of urging. He just refuses to go, and he seems to be all right, so we all left. So you can put in any level of detail that you want into this note. Now, why is it important to keep track of who did what and what were the circumstances? Well, let's say, heaven forbid, that an hour later, Joe really does have a heart attack and dies. And the family, was distraught about the whole situation, of course. But they don't really do anything about it. And then at some point, an attorney convinces them that they're reaching the statute of limitations and that they actually ought to sue the company over what they allege is insufficient response to the situation. And maybe this is a year later or whatever the statute of limitations are. And so now you're trying to go back and remember now who responded and what was the circumstances. And so now you can go back and you can see who was notified and how they were notified and how long did it take for those notifications to take place and how quickly did people respond, and that we urgently tried to convince him to go and he just flat out refused to go. So it's a great way when time has transpired or people who had been there at the time have left the company and gone other ways, you know exactly what took place. All right, so that's kind of the purpose of the log, is to allow you to keep track of a lot of information. So going back to the question about whether or not this product is compatible with Google and AWS and VoIP. The answer is that whenever you write a customization to 3CX, unless it is the most basic functionality possible, you're going to have to invariably utilize the 3CX call control API to do more complicated things. And I think in every case, with every call flow designer application we've ever built, there has always been a component of our call flow designers that require access to the call control API. And curiously, 3CX has provided the call flow designer and the call control API for the purpose of writing customizations for the system. But curiously, they don't want you installing anything directly on the 3CX server. So how do you write a custom application that's not installed on the 3CX server because 3CX doesn't want you to install anything on the 3CX server, but the call control API only functions on the 3CX server. So the solution to that problem is to create a small relay that's installed on the 3CX server that exposes that call control API to remote servers. So 911 Notifier typically is not installed directly on the 3CX server. It's installed either in the cloud or on another virtual machine or on-prem, wherever you want to have it. And then it communicates with 3CX. Remember, we're logging in with our extension and our voicemail pin. We're extracting lists of extension groups. We're looking at who the members of those extension groups are. Those are all facilities that are made possible through the call control API. And so the answer is that you have to have access to the 3CX server so that you can install the call flow designer application and so that you can install the relay so that we can communicate directly with the 3CX system. But in my experience with AWS and with Google and with VoIP, you can get access to it, or in the case of VoIP, we certainly could work with George to get access to your 3CX server to put the relay on. The nice thing is about the relay is that it's largely just a click-through install. You just say yes, 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 yes. It takes about 2 minutes to install. We currently support Windows. We're working on the Linux version of our relay now. I got approval from funding to fund migrating our relay yesterday. I've been doing a great deal of work on the supporting Linux over the last couple of months and made very, very good progress. So this is going to be happening fairly quickly now. Are there plans to support the Linux version and time frame? Well, I guess I've answered some of that question. Time frame, boy, I'm hesitant to give an ETA just yet. And the reason for that is largely because I am overly optimistic. But I can tell you right now that in my own development on the Linux platform, I can now do file system watchers, event watchers. I can get to the extensions and pins. I can get 3CX extension groups and their memberships. I can log in, log out. So all of the complexities of doing this on Linux have been addressed. And are working now in a test environment. It's now a question of building installers and those kinds of things. So I don't think it's far away, but I don't want to give you quite an ETA just yet. All right, well, if there's no more questions, we promised that this would be a fairly short webinar. We're going to try and do a webinar each week with highlighting one of our applications. We may have more than one each week, but at a minimum, we're going to do one of our products each week. So appreciate your time, and we'll talk again next week, if not before. Thank you.